Okay. So I've lost track on which take this is because I keep having to re-record it for one reason or another. But just wanted to get a quick little word out. I know it's been a while since I've updated it. Updated you guys on what I was planning on doing. It is what it is. Like I said, I'm not dead. I'm just very inactive. But it's not because I'm not working on anything. It's just I've had a lot of things going on behind the scenes and work, family, things like that. So I don't have a lot of time to record like I would like to at the moment, but it is what it is. But as I mentioned before, one of the things that I had been doing when I first started uploading things to YouTube, years ago, was I had done recordings of little short stories, primarily H.P. Lovecraft. In fact, I think that was the only thing I had recorded at the time. Only had about 4 of them that I had done. And, life gets in the way, and you don't get back into, you just kind of, certain hobbies you drop. It just happens. And I had found some of the recordings recently, and re-listening to them, I just like, wow, these are just terrible. So I definitely want to redo those. But part of what had inspired me to do that was back in October, there was a show that dropped around Halloween called Cabinet of Curiosities, produced by Guillermo del Toro. And del Toro he's a famous director, obviously. Does a lot of, in fact, was he the one who did Pan's Labyrinth? I don't remember exactly. But I know he's been a huge fan of Lovecraft, things like that. Well, part of what had attracted me to the show was that 2 of the episodes were adaptations of Lovecraft short stories, namely Pickman's Model and The Dreams in the Witch House. The latter one, I really don't remember too much about it. I remember reading it probably once when I was in college. It was probably, that was my sophomore year, I think. So you're looking between 2004, 2005, I believe. Like I said, don't remember too much about it. But Pickman's Model was easily one of my favorites out of that first little collection that I bought at a bookstore. My most favorite would be The Thing on the Doorstep is easily my favorite. And I'll probably get around to that one at some point. But anyways, I saw that both of these stories were going to be adapted for this show, and so I had high hopes. I knew Del Toro's reputation. I knew he was a huge fan of Lovecraft, and then I saw that, he wasn't directing these episodes. He was producing it, but each episode had its own director that had worked on something else. And I was like, okay, I'm sure, if he still has any sort of input into it, it'll still be decent. Well, that's what I get for thinking, because whatever I watched, I remember sitting there thinking, how in the world did anybody involved with the writing of the screenplay, doing the direction, anything like that, ever look at this and say, yeah, that's faithful to the source material. That really captures the essence of what that story was trying to communicate. Pickman's Model just was a severe disappointment, and Dreams in the Witch House almost bore no resemblance to anything Lovecraft ever wrote. It was that story in name only, and the fact that there was a rat involved. That was it. There was no other, hardly any other similarity to that story whatsoever. It was absolutely just ridiculous. Now, I say that, and then when I think about other things that I've watched and been reading recently, as I mentioned in my first update, I had been watching Alice in Borderland on Netflix. I think after I posted that video, I had binge watched the entire rest of the series after that. It's only 2 seasons. But then I started going through and reading the source material. And the source material, it's amazing the night and day difference between how that source material was adapted, quite faithfully, actually, and then how Lovecraft was just destroyed. And that really kind of speaks to a larger issue that's been going on. I know there's been a lot of complaints with DC and Marvel, and even adaptations of things like Tolkien's work lately. I know there's been some backlash with The Witcher, and just a lot of Western source material that has been getting adapted by Netflix, things like that. It's, not even just Netflix, because Rings of Power was Amazon. And just how it was almost like the source material didn't matter. What mattered was whatever agenda they had, whatever message they wanted to push, and using these worlds and using these properties was just a way for them to shove their message out there, whatever their agenda was. Who cares what the source material was like? But that was one thing, and part of why I wanted to go back in and re-record some of these stories was because, especially those two, was because I wanted to do a comparison between, okay, here's the source material, and here's how Netflix butchered it and why it was such a grievous offense to me. I realize probably nobody else cares, but if my search through Reddit and just looking at people's reactions just to those two episodes was any indication, there are a lot of fans who saw that and were like, this is a travesty. Like, what on God's green earth were they thinking? So I feel somewhat vindicated by that. But then even just doing a comparison between, okay, now how did they do that with Alice in Borderland? Here's the original, or here's the show, here's where it lines up with the source material, and in most cases, it's almost like a one-to-one correlation. I'm not saying everything needs to be done perfectly and have a one-to-one ratio there, but my goodness, at least try to stick to the source material as close as you can. At least pretend like you care about the source material. But part of what has taken me so long on that is because when I go back and I record something, these being an exception to the rule, is when I go back through and I record something that is supposed to be like a narrative or a voiceover or whatever, when I go back and listen to it, I'm going through, I'm cutting out gaps in between phrases, sentences, trying to get it flow nicer, making sure that everything, making sure that I'm not misreading any lines, going back in, re-recording stuff. There's just a lot more that goes into it. Now, to give you put things into perspective, Pickman's Model, you're talking maybe 30-35 minutes of a short story. It's not terribly long, but it's not, just a short little project either. I mean, recording, editing, all that kind of stuff easily can take me about an hour 15 or so to do that. Now, the drawback is that when you're doing something like that, it is very easy to become desensitized to how your own voice sounds, which on the one hand is good because you want to be thinking about more like what you're reading than how you sound. The problem is that, and anybody who has done any sort of writing or music stuff or, there's a phrase I heard recently that said, books are not written, they are rewritten. And it really kind of goes to the idea that, yeah, you may write something, and you may think it sounds really good when you first write it. Give it a couple days, go back, read it again. Because sometimes you'll go back in, read it, and think, what on earth was I thinking? This is trash. And that's where you revise it, you clean it up, you make it, make it fit better. And that has been my experience with this, is I went through, I did a recording of it, went through, edited, thought it sounded decent, waited a few days, and before I went to upload it, I decided, let me listen to it one more time. And I did, and I thought, this is trash, I need to redo it. Now, it may not have been. I have no idea, because I haven't gotten any feedback on it other than my own criticism. But the problem is, if I'm listening to it, and I wouldn't want to listen to me talk about it, or if I wouldn't want to listen to me read it, there's no reason for me to think anybody else would either. And I think part of the reason that I'm so critical on it is because, years ago, when I was in high school, I remember the one time I tried out for a play. Now, my brother, he had been involved in acting and stuff in high school for, pretty much as soon as he could get into it. I never did, and part of that was because I didn't want to take the time after school. I wanted to go home. I wanted to play video games. Okay, I didn't want to do anything else, and that would take time out of my day. I regret that now. I kind of wish I had, but it is what it is. Well, the one year that I did try an audition for something, I remember it was this little bit part in the play Pygmalion. It was some bystander, and the line was something along the lines of. It's responding to a question about, were you able to go out and find a cab? And I believe the line was something along the lines of, I tell you, there wasn't a cab to be found out there for love or money. It just means, there ain't anyone anywhere. And at the time, I thought, okay, well, this is this play, takes place in London, so obviously I need to do a British accent and just really wow Mrs. Henry with my audition here. The problem was my vocal reference at the time for the British accent I had in mind was Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, and I can't think of the the voice actor's name at the moment. It's right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it. But there was that one, and then of course you have all these different variations with British accents. I mean, you have your Cockney, your more higher class sounding. You have your northern, your southern area. I mean, there's just all different variations of it. In fact, there's a video of Peter Sellers talking about the different accents, and as he's talking about the different regions, you can hear that shift in his accent and how he pitches it differently. Whatever. So there's a lot that goes in there. Well, whatever I did or whatever I tried to do came out as this horrible abomination that was all of those things and none of them at the same time. And the second that I heard it come out of my face, I was horrified. I was just like, oh my goodness, what did I just do? That was the grossest, most awful sounding accent I've ever heard in my life. Like, somebody please kill me on stage now, because I've already died up here. I mean, it's just complete waste of my time. And there was no recovering from it, because, once that audition was done, it's like, surprise, surprise, I didn't get callbacks for, auditioning anything else. I did not get the part. But I was so horribly embarrassed by that I never tried out for anything ever again. Like, that was just like, nope, this is not for me. But I always enjoyed, reading out loud. I always enjoyed the dramatic reading of stuff. I remember, listening to old audio dramas and things like that, and thought it'd be so cool to do something like that. But I just never bothered. I was always too scared to try and do anything, and that's really one of the reasons why I'm so hesitant to put out a finished product of anything right now, because it is something where, I'm nervous about it, and I want it to be something where someone can listen to it and say, you know what, that was really good. I want to listen to that again. Even years down the road, say, yeah, there's different, but I remember this guy did a really good, job of, reading that sort of thing. That's what I'm shooting for. And right now, I don't feel that it's anywhere near that level. And maybe it is, and I'm just, being hypercritical. I don't know. I just know that when I listen to something that I've recorded, if it's not something that I would want to listen to, why on earth would I think anybody else would want to listen to it if I'm not confident in my own work? You know what I mean? So it's not that I'm not working on anything. It's just I'm fine-tuning it, trying to make it sound as good as I can. And it may be a while. Because like I said, I go back in, I listen to it, I re-listen to it, and try to get it as, to be something that I would say, you know what, I wouldn't mind listening to that. If I get to the point where I wouldn't mind listening to myself again, and I'm comfortable with that, then that's kind of my metric. It's like, okay, if I don't think I suck at this point, and I'm not being critical of it, then it may be decent enough to, let someone else, suffer through. And the other thing that I've been working on is, as I mentioned before, there is I talked about the biblical stuff that I've been dealing with the last several years, and there was a conversation that I had gotten into with someone, and it had originally started out dealing with Reformed theology and the idea of predestination and election, and just, all the stuff that really brings people together and people, really feel comfortable talking about with one another. Yeah, no, it's, yeah, said nobody ever. But what was interesting is the conversation, just really took a hard left turn into an area that I was not expecting. Dealing with the reliability of Scripture itself, whether it's authoritative, is it something you should take seriously? And this was something where the individual was arguing against my position, while at the same time basically saying that, none of what's, written, in Scripture really matters anyways, because it's all just people's opinion anyway. So there was a lot in that conversation that I would love to get into, but That's going to be something for another time. You know, first and foremost is just getting this update out there, saying, hey, you know, I said I was going to be out there, you know, and I said I'd be giving y'all an update on what I'm going to be uploading at some point. And, you know, here I am. It's been about 3 weeks, but I just thought I'd give an update. But there are some things in the pipeline. It's, like I said, it's just things I'm working on. And once I get into a better flow of, you know, getting things put out on a regular basis, I think things will be fine. Plus, it's, you know, at some point, I do plan on, you know, trying to take some, you know, courses online, you know, acting courses, things like that, to kind of help me refine, you know, what I do and my craft and all that, or my hobby, I guess, at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on at the moment. So, you know, stick around. There'll be something. I plan on probably at least by the end of the month having at least one of those stories recorded, and just to get it out there, just get something put up, and you know, instead of, you know, just stressing out about it and whatever else, because, you know, if you never put it out and you never get any feedback, you're really never going to know what you need to improve on. So, but all right, well, that's going to cut it for now, and I guess I will talk to you guys later. All right, have a good night.